A girl named Dorothy, a Tin Man, a Scarecrow, a lion, an evil witch, and a kindly wizard are the main characters in a series of children's books written by Frank Baum. This 1914 film, written and directed by Baum himself, was called His Majesty the Scarecrow of Oz and was released by his own company, Oz Pictures. Baum's film begins with Dorothy already in the land of Oz. The evil King Cru has brought the lovely Princess Gloria to the witch because she has refused to forget her love for Pon, the gardener's son. The slapdash sets were put up in a wooded area and shot with natural sunlight for illumination. Here are heroine Dorothy, played by Violet Macmillan, and the gardener's son, played by Todd Wright, secretly spy on old Mambi. Director Baum had gained some cinematic knowledge, and his trick shots are fairly good for the period. In this scene, the witches appear by means of a camera dissolve, and then turn into three beautiful maidens by means of a second dissolve. Mambi casts a spell on Princess Gloria, played by the Oz girl Vivian Reed, whose likeness appeared on the trademark of all the Oz films. Mambi, in a further series of dissolves, freezes Princess Gloria's heart. This was an interesting piece of screen magic for 1914 and was much more sophisticated than the somewhat old-fashioned and exaggerated acting style of the cast. The enchanted donkey comes to help Dorothy and Pon and scares the witches into an early departure. They fly away on wires and provide a thrilling exit without the benefit of camera tricks. first of Dorothy's three companions appears, the Scarecrow, played by Frank Moore. In this version, he is the real star of the picture and is played in the same nimble fashion as he was portrayed in 1925 by Larry Seaman and in 1939 by Ray Bolger in the musical version. The old witch attacks anyone who tries to befriend the princess, and with the help of stop-motion photography, she tears the Scarecrow apart. The camera is stopped for a moment, and a Scarecrow dummy is substituted. When Dorothy and the others put him back together again, the camera is again stopped while the actor returns to his former position. This is an old movie technique and was used in such early films as The Great Train Robbery, as well as many trick films in the early period of the movie's development. A new character appears in the form of Button Bright, played by pretty young Mildred Harris, who later was to become the first wife of Charlie Chaplin. The story now moves to the castle of the Tin Woodsman, played by Pierre Couderc, who has rusted and stands motionless by the tree he was chopping. As in the other versions, he is oiled and restored to life. Soon the witch finds them, and we see a gruesome scene, which is as violent as anything seen on today's screens. A black sack provides the illusion against the black doorway for a good effect. A dummy head and stop-motion photography complete this visual illusion. the witch turns pawn into a kangaroo to stop his interference with her wicked scheme. The lion makes his first appearance, and he has an excellent, if immobile, facial mask, which is very lifelike. He is in much contrast to the costuming of the donkey, who appeared in earlier scenes. The Tin Woodsman professes his love for Princess Gloria, but her heart is frozen even to his love. The gardener's son, who still loves her deeply, intervenes. To escape the witch and seek help for the princess from the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy and her friends depart for the heart of the mythical country. The Scarecrow's fall into the water gives us a short but effective underwater sequence full of visual illusions. It is obvious that Frank Baum must have admired the trick films of Frenchman Georges Méliès, whose movie career had just ended as Baum's was beginning. Baum wrote The Wonderful Wizard of Oz in 1900, and it was successfully produced as a musical in Chicago and on tour the next season. In 1903, he wrote The New Wizard of Oz, and afterwards penned a new Oz book almost every year until 1913. After the spectacular rescue of the Scarecrow, Dorothy and her friends rejoice at his good fortune and continue on their journey. We are now going to see the most striking effect in the film, the wall of water. By merely tilting the camera, Baum showed his mastery of film technique by giving the impression that the raft goes over the top of the wall of water on the way to the heart of the Land of Oz. Frank Baum began his career in theatrical stock companies, although an attempt to form his own touring company had failed. After a decade in journalism, he finally wrote the children's books which were to make him famous, both in print and on film. At last we are introduced to the Wizard of Oz himself, a much different character than was later portrayed by Frank Morgan in the musical film. This sequence abounds in both camera tricks and one lowly and outrageous pun. After finally meeting up with a cowardly lion, the adventurers set out to find Princess Gloria, but King Cru finds her first, and the brave band goes in pursuit. Frank Baum's first encounter with the movies was a series of films made by the Selig Polyscope Company in 1908, which was used to illustrate Baum's talks with which he toured the country. Selig was later to use sequences from these films as short subjects, which he released to theaters in 1910. Our friends storm the walls. The Scarecrow, despite the fact that he is riddled with arrows, is named the new king. From here on, the story moves to a predictable but happy conclusion. Baum formed the Oz Film Manufacturing Company in 1914, and the first production was The Patchwork Girl of Oz, followed by The Magic Cloak of Oz. The third production was the one we are seeing now, with a screenplay based on the plot and characters of the other Oz books. This film later inspired a book derived from the screenplay. In 1915, the Oz Company disbanded, and Baum himself died 4 years later. Since this version, the Oz story has been filmed at least 4 times. First as a classic silent film in 1925, with Oliver Hardy and Larry Seaman for Chadwick Pictures, by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in a Technicolor musical version in 1939 with Judy Garland, a television cartoon version in the 1960s starring Miss Garland's daughter, Liza Minnelli, and a live-action film released by Childhood Productions in 1969. Princess Gloria and the gardener's son are released from their spells, the king pleads for mercy, and everything ends happily as all pay homage to their hero, His Majesty, the Scarecrow of Oz. And we pay homage to Frank Baum, whose imagination made the Oz series some of the most popular books ever written for children. They are still read and loved by young people all over the world to this very day.